Welcome to Survivor Scale, the show where we break down all of horror's greatest characters to find out who has the skills, experience, and mentality to survive any situation, and the ones that don't. I'm H2 Mass, and today I'm breaking down every main character in Ari Aster's 2018 masterclass in horror, Hereditary. As one of the most celebrated horror movies of the 21st century, Hereditary has a lot going for it. Showcasing thought-provoking cinematography, captivating performances, and a spiraling story that intensifies throughout the film, we get to witness a family slowly descend into disarray as unknown horrors close in around them, unknowingly shaping their lives and rewriting their destinies to bring about some of the most terrifying scenes in all of horror. But in all this madness, each character has a chance to prove their worth, to show that even if they didn't perform well in this film, they can do better in other horror movies. But who will succeed? Who has what it takes to be the ultimate survivor, and who is simply the first kill? Well, let's find out. The film begins by introducing us to Peter and Steve, the son and father of the Graham family, as they get ready to go to a funeral. And hold up. We've already got some problems here. Now, I know we've only just begun, but Peter's already showing some potential weaknesses. His father seems to have been ready for quite some time, while Peter hasn't even gotten out of bed, showcasing a stark contrast in the preparation skills and work ethic of the two characters, something that could certainly give Steve more viability as a survivor. Steve then moves on to check on his other child, Charlie, and sees that she has somehow done even less than Peter, still sleeping alone in a treehouse after a cold night. Here, she displays her attraction to isolation, her tendency to keep to herself rather than socialize with other people, a trait that will become more important later on, with some devastating effects. At the funeral, Charlie and Peter's mom, Annie, speaks about her mother, noticing how many unfamiliar faces she sees in attendance.
It's heartening to see so many strange new faces here today.
Such an astute observation gives us a brief introduction to Annie's strengths in memory and attention to detail. Her ability to recognize people and how they relate to those around her would likely extend to other situations as well, giving her more variety in the kind and value of information she uncovers. As Annie continues speaking, Charlie makes these clicking sounds with her mouth and gets a closer look at her dead grandmother, but turns around to see, "Dear God, who is this creep? Why is he smiling like that? And why is Charlie so calm? You should be calling pest control or some kind of exterminator on this dude. I mean, come on, look at him." Charlie's reaction here, or lack thereof, is very underwhelming and really harms her survival chances in other horror movies. I mean, how in the world can you see this face and not put your guard up? It's moments like these that really differentiate one tier from the next. Characters who can recognize danger before it becomes readily apparent tend to perform much better than characters who have to see something threatening before deciding to act. However, Charlie clearly doesn't see him as such a threat, not having an appropriate response to someone so obviously devious. A bit later, when Annie talks to Charlie before bed, she notices some writing on her wall, catching a small detail that many others would overlook. Such observational skills may relate to her work as an artist. Throughout the film, we learn that Annie often spends over 100 hours on an individual project, creating many recreations of real-life events, suggesting that not only does she pick up on seemingly insignificant details, but she also has incredible patience, doing tasks that can take several months to finish. Such qualities could enable her to keep calm under pressure and avoid life-threatening mistakes, giving her an advantage over most other characters. When she leaves the room, she displays these strong observational skills again. After turning the lights off, she somehow spots the invisible woman standing in the corner. "You telling me you can see this? I had to turn the brightness up on my television just to see the shape of her head, and I'm still not sure she's there. Golly." The next day, Peter is at class staring at some ass. Hold on, is bro drooling? Nah, man, you gone too far. Get your mind out the gutter, boy. When his teacher asks him a question,
care to weigh in, Peter?
He's too distracted to respond.
About which part?
Possibly showcasing how his inattentiveness, or being horny, could lead to his downfall. Something to watch out for. During Charlie's day at school, she cuts off the head of a dead bird? I'm telling you, man, you gotta watch out for her, man. After she stuffs the head in her pocket, she reveals that she may have inherited her mother's observational skills when she spots a woman waving at her from across the street. This time though, she at least seems somewhat disturbed, hopefully suggesting that she can detect creepiness and the danger that may follow it, unlike when she saw the strange man earlier. Later that night, Peter smokes in his room, exhaling out the window. As he does so, however, we see someone else breathing off screen, suggesting that Peter is being watched, an important detail he seems to miss. Despite Peter's obliviousness though, we now have a much clearer understanding of the encroaching danger, but Peter does not, possibly hinting at his lack of awareness or paranoia, drastically reducing his chances of survival in scenarios where the threat doesn't announce itself, such as this one. Now, I know I mention it often, but I simply can't stress enough how valuable time can be. Even if it's just a few seconds, anticipating danger can allow characters to prepare for threats rather than clumsily reacting to them, making it much more likely that they survive. The next day, Peter and Charlie go to a party after Annie makes Peter take Charlie with him despite Charlie not wanting to go.
She's going with you.
Now that's gonna be important later on, so keep that in mind. While there, Charlie starts eating some cake, just horking it down, but reveals that her earlier observational ability was simply a fluke after she realizes that the cake she has been eating contains nuts, something that she is deadly allergic to. Even more damning are her actions after eating the cake. Despite feeling the effects of her allergy, she doesn't say anything to anyone for at least a few minutes, simply trying to solve the problem on her own. This social anxiety significantly raises her chances of death in situations where cooperation with others is crucial, perhaps her greatest weakness so far. When she finally does tell Peter about her breathing troubles,
I think my throat's getting bigger.
he decides to drive her to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance. Now, he may have thought that he could get to the hospital more quickly than they could have gotten to his location, but he also may have simply wanted to avoid any legal issues since he knew that he and other people at the party had been drinking and doing drugs. If this is true, it seems like this would be a negative for him because he'd be prioritizing his own comfort and social standing over his sister's life. But that would actually improve his chances of survival since he'd likely also think of his own safety before others. So I'd still consider this decision a positive, unless her death were to cause his mental health to drastically worsen, of course. But there's no way that that could happen, right? Anyway, as Peter continues driving, Charlie thrashes around in the back seat, struggling to breathe. I know her lungs were feeling a lot of pressure, but Charlie shows her lack of caution again when she sticks her head out of the window of a car driving over 70 miles per hour at night. And I'm sorry for even comparing her to Annie earlier because she once again misses a not so small detail that absolutely blows her mind. Damn, knocked her head clean off. Even Peter is at a loss for words. He's so traumatized after his sister's head flies off that he just drives home and goes to sleep. I guess he made the wrong decision back at the party. No time to mourn though, it's time to rank. Let's talk about Charlie. Charlie has almost nothing going for her. She doesn't have any particular strengths that would help her in other horror movies. I mean, she creates some interesting, whatever these things are, and maybe that can, I don't know, I'm trying, Charlie, I'm trying. I just can't see her doing well in really any horror movie unless someone just absolutely carries her throughout the entire film. Man, I hate to do this, Charlie, but you're going in F tier, with your strongest performances coming in non-horror movies and your weakest performances coming in, well, anything where someone dies. A few months later, Annie meets Joan, a member of the support group Annie had been going to before Charlie died, where she unloaded some pretty heavy and complicated family background.
My father died when I was a baby from starvation because he had psychotic depression. And he starved himself, which I'm sure was just as pleasant as it sounds. My older brother had schizophrenia, and when he was 16, he hanged himself in my mother's bedroom, and of course his suicide note blamed her, accusing her of putting people inside him.
Damn. Joan asks Annie to come to her house, and when she arrives there, Annie catches yet another detail, noticing that the welcome mat in front of Joan's door is similar to the ones her mother used to make.
Your welcome mat.
Oh, it's kind of cute, huh?
Yeah, my mother used to embroider ones just like that.
I'm telling you, man, Annie has a very good eye. Later, the remaining family members have dinner, sitting awkwardly in silence. Quickly though, Annie and Peter's emotions come pouring out as they reveal how Charlie's death has affected their views of one another.
Yeah, fine, release me, just say it. Just fucking say it. Don't you swear at me, you little shit!
Steve tries to mediate, but to no real success, with Annie and Peter throwing shots at each other and deteriorating their relationship seemingly beyond repair.
Your sister is dead! She's gone forever! But you can't take responsibility for anything! So now I can't accept, and I can't forgive.
Oh, so that's how you want to play it, huh? That's how you want to do it? Well, Peter's not going down without a fight. He places the blame back onto Annie.
What about you, Mom? She didn't want to go to the party. So why was she there?
Right, we're stopping this right now.
That's petty, man. That is so petty. In this scene, both Annie and Peter demonstrate their pettiness and tendency to blame others when under pressure and feeling the weight of their emotions, something that could harm them when interacting with certain types of people. Steve, however, showcases his ability to remain calm, not letting others easily influence his demeanor, something that would likely let him keep a clear and focused mind in other horror movies. Later, Annie coincidentally runs into Joan again. Now, I don't blame her too much for not sensing some danger after running into her like this, but I do blame her for staying so comfortable despite Joan using her hands so much. I mean, there is no reason for her to be this aggressive with her hands, and she definitely should have shown more concern when Joan asked her to come to her house to perform a seance. Like, who asked someone they just met to contact spirits with them? That's gotta be a red flag. Annie doesn't show any suspicion though, and simply goes to Joan's home when she experiences some pretty crazy supernatural phenomena, a glass moving on its own, a ghost touching her, and a chalkboard writing on itself. Understandably overwhelmed by such an unbelievable display, she leaves but takes the instructions to perform the seance herself, again missing Joan's aggressive insistence. When Annie gets back to her house, she attempts to perform the seance herself to contact Charlie, delving too deep into the spiritual realm, showing how easily she trusts people despite the potential otherworldly consequences. As a result, Charlie temporarily possesses Annie's body and speaks through her.
Mom? Mom?
Peter, though, recognizes the danger and voices his opposition.
Dad, I don't like this.
What's happening?
Please stop.
But he ends up breaking down when Charlie becomes emotional and panics.
Why are you scaring me?
Steve then throws some water on Annie to release her. At school, Peter sees a disturbing reflection of himself in the mirror and believes that a vengeful spirit has come for him. When Steve tells Annie about this, she gets angry and breaks the miniature that she had likely been working on for at least a few months. Once again showcasing how her emotions can negatively impact her decision making, causing her to act impulsively and against her best interest. A bit later, Annie seems to realize that she did something wrong in performing the seance, but perhaps arrogantly believes that only she can fix it.
Something is happening and I'm the only one who could stop it. Do you understand? I'm the only one who can fix this.
She then throws the book from the seance into the fire, which seems to cause her shirt to ignite. Disturbed even further, she goes back to Joan's place but finds it empty. Upon seeing her welcome mat again, she no longer finds it coincidental and goes home to look for some connection. Meanwhile, at school, Peter encounters Joan, bearing witness to her chants from across the street.
A paragon!
Peter, though, seems quite confused.
Peter!
You talking to me?
Get out!
Get out of what? I'm already outside. When Annie gets home, she rummages through her mother's old belongings, recognizing the same embroidery from Joan's place, and also finds pictures showing that Joan has known her mother for quite some time. As she goes through the rest of her house, she ends up finding her mother's dead body hidden away in the attic, and notices another one of the symbols that have been scattered throughout the film, many of which were a part of her or her family members' accessories. Back to Peter, he finds himself struggling with some sort of body issues, and damn, oh, what? Well, at least it doesn't look too bad. I mean, as long as he doesn't do it again, I mean... Oh man, he's really going through it, huh? After Steve picks up Peter from school and sees his face so totally crippled, he finally breaks down, showing just how intense the situation has become. When he gets to the house, Annie tells him about the corpse in the attic, but he doesn't believe her until he sees it for himself.
What the fuck is that?
Even then, he thinks Annie dug up the body and had been lying to him for the past few months.
You dug up the grave.
He seems completely disinterested in her explanation of these events. But I'm not. Here, Annie displays her ability to connect the details she uncovers to form a sequence of events that explains how other people connect to herself and those around her.
See the symbol on the necklace my mom gave me? It's her necklace, right? They're both wearing it, and they're wearing it in every photo. And look at that pattern. Did you see up there? This was painted above the body, right? In blood.
However, she does come across a bit unhinged, which makes it much harder for Steve to believe her, worsening the likelihood that any plan she has will be successful. Believing the book to have caused all their recent problems, she decides to burn it even though it will kill her as well. In this moment, she has chosen to sacrifice herself for her son because she believes that the seance she performed earlier gave it power to invade his body, a conclusion she came to after connecting her own experiences with her brother and father to the words in the book she found earlier. Man, Annie's gotta become a detective or something. Could probably figure out who framed Roger Rabbit. Now, as is often the case, I wouldn't hold her attempted sacrifice against her too much, because she likely wouldn't do that in scenarios where her children aren't in danger. And even then, she may not do it if she doesn't feel as limited in her choices as she does now. Throughout Annie's monologue, Steve stays in a state of disbelief, simply letting Annie frantically speak her mind. In her desperation, Annie throws the book into the fire, fully believing that she will combust into flames. But in an unexpected turn of events, Steve ignites like a 20th century match, and Annie falls into a trance. Now, I know this death is still a bit fresh, recently cooked, but let's talk about Steve. Steve likes order and control. He has the family members remove their shoes before walking around the house.
Shoes off, everybody.
And often checks in on everyone else, making sure they're okay, even mediating their arguments. All of this shows me that Steve can connect well with people, which would likely give him an advantage in group settings. However, disbelief and psychological stubbornness harms characters more than nearly any other trait, and his unwillingness to accept or really even acknowledge the paranormal can drastically lower his chances in supernatural films. I could see him dying early in such environments if he doesn't take them seriously, and since he didn't take them seriously in this film, even after the strange things he encountered, then he likely wouldn't in most other films as well. However, despite this pretty significant shortcoming, he still has many strengths that heavily outweigh it. So I'm still placing Steve in B tier, with his strongest performances coming in psychological horror movies and his weakest performances coming in supernatural movies. While we're at it, let's talk about Annie too, because she's basically done for. Despite being married to him, Annie is almost the opposite of Steve. While they both initially displayed some skepticism to the suggestion of the supernatural, Annie bought into the idea much more quickly than Steve did. Now, while she did have a more extreme and inexplicable experience than Steve did, making it much easier for her to acknowledge the supernatural, I think she would have been more open to it regardless and would generally take much less convincing to accept it, giving her more time to prepare for any supernatural threats. Additionally, her attention to detail is exceptional and can enable her to find connections that many others would miss. However, she may be too trusting and can become a bit too steadfast, focusing so heavily on her conclusions that she ignores her own perception and can't see how others are viewing her, making it hard to effectively convince people of her ideas. With all that said, I'm putting her in B tier, with her strongest performances coming in mystery horror movies and her weakest performances coming in action horror movies. Now, let's get back to the film. A few hours after Steve's death, Peter awakens from his slumber as a collection of naked people stand outside of his house, unbeknownst to him, of course. As he rises from his bed, "Dear God, what is that?" Oh, that's his mother. Yeah, she's no longer human. But Peter doesn't notice her, even when she crawls through the air as he turns his head. He then starts walking around the house in search of his parents, unaware of the chaos that had just ensued. But as he comes across his father's burnt remains, he notices a naked man standing in... Wait, that's the same dude from earlier. Same creepy ass smile. Nasty. He then hears a thud and turns to see his mother chasing after him like a villain from Scooby-Doo. So he runs away and trips over? Come on, man, you can't fall over like that. I thought we had gotten past this in horror movies. Luckily, Annie falls as well, giving him time to quickly get up and hide in the attic, where he begs her to stop banging her head on the ceiling. After she seems to stop, he takes a second to regain his senses, but freezes when he hears some squelching sounds. He turns to the source and finds his mother floating in the air, sawing through her neck with a wire. He quickly turns again and sees 3 more naked people smiling at him, causing him to scream and scram, jumping out of the window to his death. Peter's soul then leaves his body, and a strange light enters and takes over. The now possessed Peter gets up and goes into the treehouse, where he finds it full of naked people bowing before him, including his mother and grandmother. He then receives a Burger King crown fitting for such a delicious ending. And that's the movie. Pretty crazy, right? But let's talk about Peter. First things first, I'm not trusting this man driving anywhere, especially not during any kind of high pressure situation. I mean, how do you damn near hit a pole on an empty road? He better hope that the colt made his car swerve, because that's just inexcusable. Additionally, I know he experienced something truly horrifying in Charlie's death, but if he consistently has such a debilitating reaction, then he absolutely cannot make it through films like Jeepers Creepers or Wrong Turn or VHS, where things just as or even more crazy happen. Though I don't hold this against him too much, as he did react much more effectively after seeing his father die, still able to run and hide even as his own mother chased after him. He viewed her as dangerous despite being her son, which bodes well for him in situations where some sinister entity tries to manipulate him. Overall though, he doesn't really display any outstanding strengths and feels like just a small step above the average victim in teen slashers. Constantly horny, always smoking, and easily distracted. He's just a normal guy for the most part, so I'm placing him in C tier, with his strongest performances coming in slasher movies and his weakest performances coming in survival horror movies. Now it's time to give out the awards. Well, one award and one whatever the opposite of an award is. First off, the Ultimate Survivor Award goes to the character most likely to survive a random horror movie, and this was pretty close between Annie and Steve. I can see a lot of situations where one performs well while the other performs poorly, but ultimately I went with Annie. While Steve had her beat in situations where people have most of the power, I thought Annie would have a much easier time in the early stages of horror movies as she's much more likely to accept the otherworldly. Yes, she can become a bit headstrong, trying to do it all herself, which would likely overwhelm her in many other films. But her attention to detail and ability to draw accurate conclusions gave her the slight edge for me. With all that said, Annie is the ultimate survivor. The First Kill award goes to the character least likely to survive a random horror movie, and do I even need to say it? I'm giving it to Charlie. Look, she seems nice and all, but I can't even imagine her making it far in pretty much any horror movie. She'll probably even die in the ones where nobody dies. She can't really persuade people, probably can't fight, doesn't make good decisions, isn't very careful, basically no positive traits. Charlie is the first kill. But that's it. The average ranking for this cast was C tier. A fairly average collection of characters. Since its release, Hereditary has really only gotten better for me, still offering one of the most layered and interesting narratives in all of horror. Thanks for watching.